back to Metropole TV, the first 24-hour business news channel here in Nairobi and in East Africa, in point of fact. This is The Smart Investor. My name is Ali Khan Satchu, and we've got a very interesting guest in the studio. This is Layla Liebetrau.
Thank you, Ali.
Layla is the lead program coordinator for the Route to Food initiative.
Correct.
And Route to Food initiative conducts evidence-based advocacy work backed by research, extensive professional studies to promote greater allocation of resources to food and nutritional security of the country. Just read, and then you got a publication called Chakula.
Yes.
Yes, good name.
Thank you. Thank you.
I fancy some Chakula. Layla, let's first of all start off with this from a macro perspective. This is an agri-economy, is it not?
Correct.
Okay. Statistics seem to indicate that GDP, about 35% or thereabout, is agri-based.
Okay.
And then what I notice is because you have a huge diffusion, because so many Kenyans, unlike South Africa, have a little shamba or something where they at home somewhere, wherever they might be in the city. So it seems to me that you get agriculture right, you get a whole bunch of people doing reasonably well. Is that true?
That people are doing reasonably well from agriculture.
No, I'm saying that there's so many people involved in the agri-economy that if we can get the agri-economy working, the effect on a huge swathe of people is going to be much larger than in many other interventions.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Ali, and I think one of the most important things about one of the biggest problems that Kenya is facing at the moment is the issue of obviously systemic hunger and chronic food insecurity.
Yes.
And food security has always sat in the agricultural docket.
Yes.
And I think we really need to start not only looking at the agriculture sector as something that's going to contribute to GDP and economic growth, but to look at it and go, who are the people and what is their status of their nutrition and their health who are actually driving the economic growth of the country. And so we don't need to only we shouldn't be looking at agriculture only from like a productionist point of view,
yes,
but also who are the people that are the engines behind enabling this, and how can we actually better empower and better support the people that are employed and working in earning a living in the agricultural sector.
Yeah. So can I just take you on a segue? You spoke about nutrition.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a really big issue. And,
yeah.
It's been shown that if children are not fed properly, their growth is stunted, their ability to think and concentrate is not there. What is the state of play with our people in terms of nutrition? Have they got a nutritional diet, or has it all changed people? Because I hear everyone's just eating chips here, right? There's a massive potato shortage.
Yeah.
But what has happened to our diets? Are you intervening at that level?
Well, yes, we are. So we do like to create awareness around nutrition aspects of food security and of the right to food, because it's an often quoted statistic that 1 in 5 children under 5 are stunted.
Yes,
in
Kenya.
In Kenya, and Kenya is currently facing, as are many other countries, this issue of hidden hunger.
What's hidden hunger?
So basically, where you might be eating, but you're not getting your adequate nutrients. You're not having a nutritionally diverse diet. And also the double burden of hunger, which is some people on the one hand now, so the Ministry of Health is having to deal with, on the one hand, people who just simply aren't eating enough calories per day,
yes,
to dealing with sort of obesity, which is leading to non-communicable diseases,
I read
diabetes.
That is really spiking big time.
Absolutely in Kenya. So we're really sort of operating on two ends of the extreme. And I think what I have found quite frustrating is that food security only, when you talk to anyone about this, they think, oh, this is agriculture. But it is absolutely got to do with the Ministry of Health as well. So it's all good and well to go big for universal health care. We're investing in, all this money into health. If you aren't sort of addressing the prevention component of it, so addressing a cause of what a lot of the issues are. There's a lot of a massive increase in cancer in the country, and what the causes of those are, and a lot of them are in fact diet related.
Are they?
Yeah, and how the food is produced in Kenya. So
what is it, because we're using too many pesticides? I saw other things which were saying some of our food's got ARVs, antibiotics, which have come into the river system, into the water.
Oh.
Is it as catastrophic as some of these reports have indicated?
I think we need to be deeply worried as
about what we're eating.
About what we're eating and the level of pesticide residues in the food we're eating. So at the moment, farmers are using a mix of organic or conventional farming. If you're not a bigger player, I mean, you can't afford, because these inputs are quite expensive. But then, so they're applying a lot of chemical pesticides. I mean, the Pesticides Controlled Product Board has registered 718 products, of which 28% are banned in Europe for their possible or for their harmful effects on human and environmental health.
So why are they allowing it here?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I mean, I looked at the PCPB has one of their sort of performance indicators is how many pesticides they can register per year. So, I mean, one might assume that if your indicator is how many pesticide products you can approve or regulate, it's a bit counterintuitive, because it almost says that, well, the more that you allow into the country, the better you are doing as an organization. Whereas, you know, many scientists have done, and I mean, we've recently had, last week there was the big agroecology conference.
Yes, I heard about it.
Very good, excellent. Organized by BioVision Africa Trust and iFoam, and had several other supporting partners. And there were a number of presentations there which focused on the importance of organic farming and using agroecological systems of farming.
But the production under that agro and more organic farming.
Yes.
Is it the same for the smallholder farmer?
Yes.
Because if you look at our economy, we have a lot of smallholders, don't we?
Yes.
Yes. And you were telling me that the budget was actually seemingly more designed for large holders.
Yes.
And I go back to, and maybe you're too young to remember, that, you know, there was President Mutharika, the previous one in Malawi. He introduced, you know, subsidized fertilizer, and most of Malawi's smallholder farmers, and production went up like 250%. Is it possible to have such a miraculous increase in production?
I don't know. I mean, have you followed how production has been since then?
Well, then they went broke, so they couldn't do it the next year, and then the production collapsed. But I'm just wondering whether it's the small interventions that are required, and whether we have the sophistication to reach so many people.
I mean, I don't think this is an issue, Ali, of subsidizing chemical fertilizers, because that's very problematic for the soil.
Yeah.
So it might have better performance in terms of productivity per acre and in the first year.
Yes.
But then, you know, you're having problems because your soil you have poor soil quality the following year, because you've used now these chemical fertilizers and possibly also pesticides, and all of them strip the soil of its nutrients. So I think we need to look at, when we look at fiscal policies or a national government policy approach to agriculture, the focus needs to be on our operating context, which is one where we've got, you know, 80% of the farmers are smallholder farmers. We're facing climate change, which you raised the alarm about just prior to our interview, and also declining biodiversity in Kenya. So we need to look at a form of producing food, or creating a food system which is self-containing, where we can be self-sufficient, where smallholder farmers can be self-sufficient, and they're producing food in a sustainable way. So that is using readily available recycled resources and not chemical pesticides and inputs. And interestingly, studies that have been done comparing agroecology to sort of conventional farming methods, there was a study done in Western Kenya, shows that the productivity of agroecology, the level of production is in fact greater. And BioVision also a few years ago did a similar study, and the yields from organic farming were greater.
So you're intervening and pushing this particular approach, which seems to me to be the right approach.
Yes.
The quality of our food should be better and at the same time more organic. Are you carrying the farmers with you? Do they get it? And then what about the consumer? Do they appreciate the fact that, there is a difference between something which is, because I remember, in the UK, for example, if the banana was slightly brown, people didn't want to buy it, but it was a perfectly good banana. Are we in the same boat?
I think if we look at from a farmer's perspective, there are many farmers that I've seen who feel like genetically modified seeds are the solution for them. And that's sort of supporting this whole productionist or industrial agriculture approach. But in the same breath, there are an increasing number of farmers recognizing that there is a global market, firstly for organic produce, which is very appealing, provided you can meet the standards, for export. And also, I think people realizing there is a growing movement, I feel, in Kenya. I mean, slow but growing, because we've not got a big. We have to look at who's driving the economy and the sort of the wealth of people. But there are people who are recognizing that it's better to support smallholder farms where you know where your foods come from. There's a direct relationship between who's producing your food and you as the buyer of that food. And how is that food grown? Is it organically grown? Is it using chemical pesticides? I think Tuskies are also looking at an approach as looking at stocking organic products as well.
Which is great.
There is a growing awareness, and I think that we need to speak more about it. And I think as a consumer, you need to start asking these questions. We've got this difficulty where a lot of people are not buying from supermarkets. So they're buying from kibandas, like local markets, where it's not possible to know really how that food is produced. Has it got a lot of chemicals? Have a lot of chemicals?
So you're buying it blind,
basically. And I think there need to be stricter controls, definitely by the regulatory authorities, on how food is being grown and what are Kenyans eating, what is being made available. And I mean, the statistics, we can look at a number of the products, pesticide products that are being used in Kenya, things like the Thunder, Bulldog Star, Confidor, I think is the other one. These are very, very harmful products, and each one's got a slightly different case, but they've got active ingredients in them. Thunder and Confidor they have active ingredients that are part of a pesticide group called neonicotinoids. There was some coverage on it, I think, towards the end of last year, because neonicotinoids have been banned in Europe and are now and are not banned in Kenya. And if a European country is saying, or Europe is going, listen, we're not sure about what the effects are, if there are carcinogenic effects of these products. Therefore, we're taking a precautionary approach, and we're taking it off the market. I think we need to follow suit in that.
Yes.
And I think also, Ali, Kenya's at an agricultural crossroads. We've got this, this aspiration, it seems like, that we see in fiscal policies and also in the Big Four agenda to move towards this industrial, large-scale agriculture, which is monocropping. So it's big fields of wheat, big fields of maize, combine harvesters, silos. So So we have, that's the one option, and then at the other option, because we're not so far along on that path. It's not like South Africa. We have this approach of going, do we want to be part of a growing a green movement globally? And do we rather want to look and adopt policies, for example, like Brazil has, to address food insecurity and hunger, by using agroecological or more sustainable systems of farming, which serve the dual purpose of allowing smallholder farmers to be food self-sufficient, and it addresses, agroecological approaches are more resilient to climate change, because you're using intercropping and mulching, so the soil is always, you've got trees, so the soil is always like held intact. So if there's a big rain, like a lot of rain, the topsoil is not being washed away. And we read an interesting. We got a letter submitted to us from a farmer in Zimbabwe after Cyclone Idai, and he had been around, and he had been to the one area where they were practicing agroecology and the other area where they weren't, and there were still negative consequences of the cyclone in the one area where they were doing agroecology, but nowhere near as devastating as the other areas, conventional agriculture.
Layla, every year we seem to have a shortage of some staple commodity, right? I mean, if it's sugar or it's corn at the moment, maize. Are we fundamentally not able to feed the number of people in Kenya ourselves? Or is it a question of more joined up thinking would allow us to feed everybody? Or are we a net food deficit nation?
I think when we look at the right to food, Ali, the government shouldn't be feeding people. The right to food is not the right to be fed. It is the right to feed oneself in dignity.
Yes.
So people should be able
to
either afford to buy food, or to be able to grow that food themselves and then have surplus for the market. And so I think we need to move away from this idea as Kenya can definitely feed itself. We needn't rely on imports from our East African neighbors.
We're just importing 1 million tons of maize, I think.
Also I've heard eggs as well.
From Uganda.
Exactly. So, and when I just talk with my colleagues, it's a bit of an outrage. Like, how is this happening? I mean, Kenya's got egg. Why are we importing eggs from Uganda?
Are they cheaper? Much cheaper?
They must be.
Must be on price.
But and that's a lot of the comment, which is, why is agricultural production in Kenya so expensive?
Why?
I think it's because we're relying a lot on these inputs, expensive inputs, and the government's not setting up an enabling environment for people to be able to produce food, in abundance and also competitively. So when we look at things like, we have a smallholder farming context, farmers need water. So we need to look at not large-scale irrigation schemes, we need to look at decentralized small-scale irrigation solutions where every house has like a water point, and they can grow their food.
Is that possible?
Yes.
At the micro level?
Yes, and that's where we should be looking at in terms of irrigation. We need to reinstate extension services. If you mentioned earlier that I'm taking quite a traditional approach to this. Traditional is not backwards. Agroecology is organic. It's not backwards. We're not going back to some sort
forwards.
It's forwards, and it's not to say, people like to say, large scale, we need to, modernize agriculture, we need to use like latest technologies. Agroecology is a kind of a technology, it's a science in as much as like a genetically modified organism is a science.
Yes.
So we need to, I'm digressing, but we need to, we need to look at I think we need to look at fiscal policies like decentralized irrigation, extension services,
So you're
so that
talking
knowledge
more
can
micro
be shared.
level extension
Yes.
to actually reaching the individual with a quarter acre
Yes.
somewhere and sort of making them.
Yes, I mean, how we expect to, there's a lot of budget allocation given to agricultural research. How is that research going to be?
Is it applicable to a farmer?
And also, how is that research going to be disseminated? So farmers need access to knowledge. They also need to be able to save and store and exchange their seeds. Indigenous seeds, when I speak about indigenous, we're also, we're solving for that problem of nutritionally diverse food, because we're not only looking at planting the same crop, so this heavy dependence on maize. And I think that's where we need to be plugging in terms of a policy approach to supporting food systems.
Why
in
is
Kenya.
South African food so much cheaper? Why can I go and eat like a king for $10, which would cost me $30 here? And if you look at the supermarket, is that because you have mass agriculture?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know the South African context well enough, Ali, I'll be honest with you. But I think...
cost of living, if you look at it from a South African point of view, whenever I go and visit, compared to here, it feels a lot more expensive in urban centres in Africa than it does in South Africa, for example.
I mean, I actually don't agree.
You think it's cheaper here?
Yes. Yeah, I think
We'll have
there's
to go and...
there's a range. I mean, so I'm from South Africa.
Yeah,
so when
that's why I asked you the question,
Yeah,
because
so
I see a lot of South African, like oranges and a lot of produce come in, imported in.
Lemons, there's a lot, grapes. I mean, I think food in South Africa is, when I go back and I just go home and visit, I find it very expensive.
Do you?
Yeah. So I think here I have much closer access here, I feel like, to, I get my food from an organic farm.
You do?
They deliver my baskets. There are a number of these
I've
suppliers
heard.
now in Nairobi.
And so you don't know what you're getting. You get whatever they've got.
There are some that just do that basket approach where they'll just harvest. But there are also others where you can order and then they'll deliver. They might not have it every week, but they have regular items that you can choose what you want to order. So I really think that's where we need to go as consumers, to look at where are we buying our food, who are we supporting by buying our food from that person or from the supermarket, what's the whole value chain behind it, and to closing that gap between the producer and the consumer, and so we can cut out a lot of the middlemen as well.
Your one key intervention you'd like to see happen, the silver bullet, you think, which would make a lot of difference to this whole matter?
Silver bullet. I think we need policy support. I think we need national government to start advocating for organic food.
But they've also got to appreciate that it's hundreds of thousands of small farmers that they've really got to, they've got to look after.
Yeah.
Layla, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. We could go on all night,
Thank you.
but I mustn't.
Thank you, Ali, very much.
Thank you very much. That was a great conversation with Layla, talking about the whole farm to fork story and whether we're going to make ourselves food sufficient and nutritionally sufficient as well. Thank you for watching. This was Metropole TV. This was The Smart Investor, and my name is Ali Khan Sachu. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.